It's 9 o'clock across the UK.
Torture cannot, will not, and is not being used under any circumstances by British agencies.
The most talked about radio show is here. Call Clegg. 0345 6060 973. Get straight through now. Leading Britain's conversation. This is Call Clegg with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Only on LBC.
Time for Call Clegg with me, Nick Clegg, here on LBC. So I'll be taking your questions as always for the next half an hour. So do get in touch. You can call on 0345 6060 973. You can always watch, of course, on the website as ever, lbc.co.uk. So let's go to the first caller, who is Herbie in Harrow. Hello, Herbie.
Oh, good morning, Nick.
Morning.
Nick, there is the report this morning regarding the sell-off of the post office.
Yeah.
Do you not think that the people that you advise, who seem to have made a killing out of it, should pay the shortfall, because they're the ones that are supposed to have the brains? And yet they've undersold us again, and they've made a killing out of it, and the taxpayers got to pick up the shortfall yet again. Every time you do something, we seem to have to pay the rebound off it.
Well,
time after time.
Yeah, well, Herbie, let's remember...
Yeah, go on, carry on. I'm listening.
Yeah. Let's remember what this report says from Lord Miners. He actually says that the sale was done very professionally. It was done well. It was done very mindful of of the public interest of taxpayers, getting the right value for taxpayers. I mean, you remember immediately afterwards, and the share price surged. I remember talking about it on this programme at the time. People said, it's been undervalued by £1 billion, maybe more than £1 billion. Actually, what he says is today in his report, he says, look, it was sold for £2 billion, right? And he says you could possibly have got 180 million more, which is a much smaller amount than people were suggesting at the time was foregone. But he said you couldn't do that without taking additional risks, and he says it's perfectly understandable that the government, as the guardian of the public finances, doesn't take unnecessary risks. So he basically says it was well done. He makes lots of technical suggestions, by the way, about how these things should operate in the future, like digital auctions. He suggests it could be a sensible way to proceed in the future. But he basically says it was done well. We didn't lose, inverted commas, the money that was claimed at the time. And he says, yes, a bit of extra money compared to the total sale price of £2 billion possibly could have been extracted out of it, but not without risk. And I think it's quite right. And I've defended, Vince Cable all along on this, that he has taken a sensible, as you'd imagine from a man like Vince, considered position to all of this, rather than going for bust in a way which would run risks.
But Nick, I would not trust Vince Cable and your good party with my bank account, let alone anything else, if this is your attitude. 118 million, regardless, is a lot of money. It's not peanuts. Every time the government's got their fingers in the pie, with their fingers seem to be laden with cash at the taxpayer's expense, which we have to keep on paying back. You seem to forget. The taxpayer has to pick up the shortfall. You sold off a commodity that shouldn't have been sold, and we're now paying the price yet again, and you won't stand up and admit that it was wrong. Your advisors are the people that have benefited it, not the taxpayer, and we're the ones that are suffering yet again. You seem to butter up these people. You seem to protect these people time and time again. When are you going to come out from behind the closet and be open about it, that you made a mistake, and try to do something for the taxpayer again, rather than for your rich friends who are making killings out of our expense every time you buy something or sell something off? It always costs us money. I can't believe it. If these are so-called professionals, God blimey, no wonder the country's in the state that it's in.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, obviously you've got what you want to say about it, and you're saying it. I would ask you if you don't mind, Herbie, just have a look at this report, will you? Because it really does not. It just simply doesn't confirm what you say.
It does say 180 million pounds.
It says it could have been whilst taking on extra risk. And if we'd done what Herbie's now suggesting, and actually if Vince had done, and I'm very pleased he didn't, has sort of gone for extract every single possible penny and pound, but taken significant risks in doing so, Herbie, you'd be the first person to ring me and say, "Why did you, government? Why are you acting so irresponsibly and taking risks with our money? This is a treasured national asset, so we shouldn't be sort of flogging it off in a way which is risky." I think he struck the right balance, and I think Vince has been subject to a lot of kind of suggestions that somehow he could have easily generated another £1 billion for the government. This report clearly shows that is nonsense. The report says he did it well, and the report said he did it responsibly, and that he could have extracted a bit more value, but not without taking risks. And I don't think you should take big risks when you are trying to make a sale of this kind.
We move on to other calls.
Chris in West Wickham. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Good.
Mr. Clegg, I would like to know how your party is proposing to deal with the child abuse epidemic in the UK in terms of manpower and IT to deal with online child abuse. And I just don't understand how cutting police resources will meet the increase in demand of the reporting of child abuse, which we've seen quadruple since the Savile case. 34,000 police and police staff have been lost since 2010, and another 5% cut in funding for police resources. It just doesn't add up to me, And as a campaigner for child abuse and support for survivors, it really is concerning me.
Chris, can you just tell me, when you say you're a campaigner, are you a campaigner who works for the police? Have you worked in the police? Sorry?
I'm a survivor of child abuse and a campaigner for child abuse.
Right. Okay. Well, look, Chris. Firstly, I hope you heard what Theresa May said earlier in the week, where she said, and this is something that I think, I assume you, Chris, and many other of the survivors groups and others have rightly been pressing for, is that the inquiry has proper statutory powers to do its job. On the separate issue which you talk about, which is police resources, you're basically right to say that the police have, in my view, with huge kind of grace under pressure, with great professionalism, had to absorb very significant reductions on their budgets over the last few years, for all the reasons I don't need to repeat to you, because we have to sort of cut our cloth to sort of to suit our means, and they've done it whilst at the same time presiding over a very significant drop in overall crime rates, which is a very, very good thing, and I think we should all pay tribute to the police to do so. The balance we need to strike now, which is the one that you're talking about, Chris, is whilst the police will need to make further savings, and they will, and by the way, they will under whichever government is in power after next May, because we still need to make savings. How do we make sure we don't do that in a way that prevents them from going after a lot of the allegations, a lot of the information that's coming to the surface in the way that you describe? And that's how we need to work with the police on that. In a wider context, it's one of the many reasons why I so fervently disagree with this kind of right-wing lurch that the Conservative Party and that George Osborne has now embarked upon, where he's basically said that public services like the police are going to bear all the burden of further austerity, and he's not going to ask the very wealthy in society to pay a single extra penny in tax, which I think would strike a better balance. Yes, there will be spending reductions, but if you also add to the mix some fair additional contribution through tax from the wealthiest in society, then actually you reduce a bit the pressure that exists on public services like the police.
Quick response from you, Chris.
I've been involved with all the Theresa May meetings, and I do believe that she's going to make a difference with this inquiry.
Good.
However, police resources are being cut in terms of IT and manpower, and we need specialist teams to deal with this cancer that is child abuse in our society.
Well, look, Chris, everybody is going to agree with you that, with each passing week, the dimensions, the scale of the abuse that it seemed to occur across time, over several decades, across the whole country, clearly what is coming to the surface is of a nature, of a gravity, which is shocking people, but also needs, as you say, a lot of time and effort from the police in the months and years ahead to get to the bottom of it. And All I can say to you is that this is a balancing trick. It is. The police will have to have already absorbed, quite considerable savings, but we've got to do so in a way that doesn't make them doesn't prevent them from going after the truth without fear or favour.
Thank you for that, Chris. Where do we go now, Deputy Prime Minister?
Ahmed in New Malden. Hello, Ahmed.
Good morning, Mr. Clegg. Good morning, Mr. Ferrari.
Hello, sir.
Just very quickly, firstly, if I may wish you a happy Christmas and
to you.
season's
Likewise.
greetings. And Mr. Clegg, and very best wishes for the oncoming election. My question is very quickly is that, apparently Labour MPs are being told not to discuss immigration during election campaign. I hope you will not direct your MPs not to discuss this uneconomical immigration issue from EU and the rest of the world, which is a matter of great concern to majority of the people in the country. So
what is the stay on the line, Ahmed? What is the Liberal Democrat stance on immigration, and what do you make of the fact
we talked about it a lot here on this show, Ahmed, and for exactly the reasons that you said. It's of a huge concern to a lot of people. And, in a democracy, politicians shouldn't be doing what the Labour Party appear to be saying, which is sort of ignore what people say on the doorstep. You've got to address it, in my view, on immigration, not pander to some people's fears, which is what UKIP and large parts of the Conservative Party do, but to engage with it seriously and say, yeah, look, some of people's concerns are totally well-founded. I mean, for instance, it cannot be right that previous governments removed border controls, which meant that which used to exist, which counted people out as well as counting people in. We're now, at my personal insistence, reinstating those proper border controls. And I'll tell you why that's so important, because it relates to your other point, Ahmed, about illegal immigration. One of the biggest problems of illegal immigration is people who arrive here legally, right? They arrive here on a visa, and then they stay here illegally. In other words, they stay here beyond the point at which they're entitled to be here on the terms of their visa. You can't work out, as a country, we can't ask the Home Office to work out who is overstaying their visa if you don't have a system of counting people out and counting people as much as counting them in. And so that's just a very specific example. There are a whole bunch of other things as well. We should be
time we're in Europe, of which you're such a huge fan, Mr. Clegg, we can never control our borders.
As long as we're in Europe, we have this right. You're absolutely right. People have the right to get to move around the European Union.
But we seem to be the United States of Europe at the moment. People want to come here. People like Britain. It's seen as a success story.
Well, hang on. It's a two-way street. There are what is it? Well over 1.5 million people, Brits, who are elsewhere in Europe who are looking for work. I think the thing
there's more than 1 million people come to London in the last 10 years.
Well,
if you look across the whole of the country,
actually, over time, I mean, it's been a relatively kind of balanced thing in terms of the Brits going elsewhere and and other Europeans coming here. Recently, it's been a bit different.
But for a while, 750,000 Poles came here. We haven't sent 750,000 people to Poland.
The vast majority of those, of course, go back home after a certain period of time.
The vast majority?
Yeah. Most go back after a certain period of time. And of course, the vast majority do not claim benefits. But where, and this is what I think is very important, where the rules are seen to be unfair, particularly where the rules have in the past allowed people to come into this country and claim benefits first day that they're here, no question asked. We just stop that, and that's why I'm very proud of the fact, Ahmed, that as well as addressing issues of illegal immigration the way that I described, putting back in border controls, we've got to be tougher on employers who employ people below the minimum wage. We've quadrupled the fines on employers, but we should also make sure that the freedom to move around Europe is not the same as the freedom to claim. It was never designed to be, and it should never be, and that's why we're the first government to actually separate those two things.
All right, I think we've got a related story. I was told something was coming through, but that's not. Let's take it from the screen. The European Court. This is news breaking at this time. You listen to LBC 9:14. The European Court of Justice has ruled that British-Irish citizen Sean McCarthy should be allowed to bring his Colombian wife to the UK from their home in Spain without her having to apply for a travel visa, potentially opening UK borders to large numbers of non-European Union nationals. So this is from the European Court of Justice, which, of course, some would argue sits over British courts. British-Irish citizen Sean McCarthy can bring his Colombian wife to the UK. So yet more people packing into the country, Deputy Prime Minister. Are you aware of this case?
I try to display encyclopedic knowledge of every issue in
you do a better job than
current
I do.
affairs, but I'm afraid it is beyond me to be able to provide immediate judgment on a judgment that has just been declared. But look, we'll look at it. Of course, as a government, we'll look at it. I will
Sean
find
McCarthy is a dual British and Irish national living and working in Spain with his wife, a Colombian citizen, Patricia McCarthy Rodriguez. They have 2 young children who are both British citizens. Mrs. McCarthy claims she should be allowed to travel to the UK with her British family without having to obtain a British visa, as she holds EU residence card issued by the Spanish government. The British government had challenged this, and now we have this ruling from the European Court of Justice that they can come here. Yet more people, Colombians now coming in.
Let me have a look at the case. I honestly, without knowing what passport holders from across the European Union, much like we can travel to other parts of the European Union, but having to take out visas, can come and visit Britain as well. I'm assuming
British Irish national.
I'm assuming what
married to a Colombian the Colombian now just comes into the country. Why do we even have
no.
control?
I suspect, by the way, from what little you just read out, it'll be all about the status of the residence card, the identity card in Spain compared to passports. But let me have a look, and then obviously.
Ahmed, you wished us a very Merry Christmas, and I'm sure Mr. Clegg, I certainly received it. Yes, but it was very little.
I have a card for you.
Well, I've got a card for you.
No, look here. No, I like to think my card.
This is going to work on radio.
It's not going to work on radio. Mine is addressed, and yours is unaddressed.
Well, I'd like you to look.
Thank you
at
for
my card.
the unaddressed.
Thank you.
Thank you for the unaddressed envelope.
Can we put my card online?
That's very good.
There we go. So I have rather aped the Christmas card that you made with your beautiful wife.
Nick, can I, don't take this badly, but I slightly prefer to be in a passport booth with Miriam than I do in a very garish jumper with you.
Come out quite as well. We will put that online so everybody can see what made the Deputy Prime Minister chuckle. Yeah, but there was little Christmas cheer yesterday down at Prime Minister's Questions, Deputy Prime Minister. Can I say, Ed Miliband said that David Cameron is taking us back to the 30s. Mr. Cameron was pointing out that Labour now have got 17 points behind UKIP when it comes to the economy. And can I put it to you? You didn't have much Christmas. No. You look decidedly grumpy. What's the matter with you?
It's not grumpy. Do I enjoy sitting there watching Ed Miliband and David Cameron week in, week out sort of tear strips off each other, and I can't get up and say my piece? Yeah, it's not my favourite time of the week. I much prefer this bit. Yeah. This half hour. Of course I do. Yeah. Not least with these Christmas cards that are being showered on me in unaddressed envelopes. But, yes. No, but I'll tell you what I think is happening in Prime Minister's Questions, which is not, it's not surprising as we run up to a general election, but David Cameron, to be blunt, is not speaking as sort of Prime Minister of coalition government increasingly at Prime Minister's Questions. He's basically using it as a platform to advertise Conservative Party policy. Now, it's not really my job to sit there on my hands politely, helping him along.
What do you want to say?
Well, I'd like to get up and talk about my policies and my excellent ideas, which are quite different, of course, to the Conservatives.
Such as your free meals.
Yeah.
1 in 5 children in some areas are shunning Nick Clegg's free school meals in favour of packed lunches.
Is that from that joyless, grumpy lot at the Daily Mail? It's absolutely a triumph. 85% of children, far in excess, by the way.
They've got 81%, so let's
85%, actually. Let's get our facts right, of children are now taking up these healthy free school lunches at lunchtime. And I was at a school yesterday. Let me just give you an illustration.
290,000 pupils prefer to take a banana and a packed lunch.
I'll tell you what. I think part of the problem, particularly with the old sort of grumpy folk at the Daily Mail, they seem to think that I think they imagine that every packed lunch is sort of full of hummus and fresh succulent fruit and muesli. Actually, it's a nonsense. You speak to teachers and they will say to you, and this of course was what was proved in the review, in the report, the independent report that got this whole thing going in the first place, that most packed lunches, not all of course, I'm sure someone here is preparing lovingly a fantastically nutritious packed lunch, but a lot of packed lunches are not actually as good for children in terms of their nutritional value as a healthy meal shared with other children at lunchtime. I've spoken to teachers who say a child who turns up at school with a slice of white bread with some chocolate paste on it and a fizzy drink, and you don't need anyone from anyone else to sort of survey this. It's just common sense. A 6-year-old who's just had a slice of white bread with some chocolate paste and a fizzy drink isn't going to concentrate very well.
Free, why aren't children eating it? In the southeast, it's as low as 81%. That's 1 in 5 don't want it.
Let's get the facts right. Before, 300,000 children were eating free school meals. It's now 1.6 million. It's also because, yes, it saves families money, which is not a bad thing. You're now going to start complaining about the fact that we're saving per child, per family, £400. Hang on a minute. So you're now advocating, what is it? If you've got 2 young young children in reception,
Yeah,
years
that's
1 or
very
2.
good.
You want families across the country to pay 900 quid, which they don't have to. I think it's a good thing we're saving them money.
I still can't work out why Frank Lampard's daughters get it, but there we are.
Well, as we've talked about before, because by making
Not that
this
I have any trouble with Mr.
universally
Lampard.
available, children sit down, share a healthy lunch together. It has a dramatic effect on their ability to concentrate and do well in the classroom. And by the way, it disproportionately benefits the 4 in 10 poor children who are in poverty, officially who don't get free school meals. Do you know what? I care so much more about the hundreds of thousands of children, the 4 in 10 children who are in poverty, who benefit from this now, who weren't previously receiving meals, than I do Wayne Rooney's or Elton John's children. And let me just give you an example. Yesterday I was at a school, inner city, London school.
Yes, you were.
And they were telling me that before we brought this in in September, 40% of kids there were coming to school and they were not receiving a healthy meal at lunchtime, and now only 12 children out of, actually it's a 3 form entry, so it's quite a large primary school, only 12 children are not doing so for one reason or another, and they are saying it's having a dramatic effect on the children's ability to do well in the classroom in the afternoon. I know there are some sort of, grumpy old naysayers who always want to poo-poo a really good thing, but actually parents like this, kids like it, teachers like it. It saves them money, it puts a healthy meal in their tummies, and it makes them concentrate better in the classroom.
Should we move on?
Laura in Ashted.
Hello, hi.
Hello, Laura.
My question to you, is why my husband and I have been paying into the tax system ever since we started work. My husband 20-odd years, me about 10 years, and now when we need help the most, we have 4 children. We won't be getting child benefit from next April because supposedly we earn too much. And yet last week we were hearing, because I listen to LBC every day, that something like £600,000 a week go for child benefit to children that don't live in this country. It goes abroad. My question is, why do my children who are British won't be getting this money, but yet children that don't live in this country do? That's really unfair.
It is unfair, and it's wrong, and it should change, Laura, basically, in a nutshell. You're quite right. There is this really perverse thing in the system at the moment under the rules, which mean that it's not in a huge number of cases, by the way, in the grand scheme of things, but do you want to, even if it's in a handful of cases, it just feels wrong, doesn't it? It feels wrong to you, it feels wrong to me.
It feels really wrong, because I'd rather not get this money and children that do need it in the country get it, but children in this country. Honestly, it makes my blood boil thinking how much money goes abroad. It shouldn't. It should stay here.
Yes, I basically agree. I do agree, Laura.
What are you going to do about it, Deputy Prime
Well,
Minister?
we got to change the European rules to sort that out, and that's exactly what I want us to do. That's what we are already talking to other European countries about. I think there's actually an increasing recognition across the European Union that the European Union rules have to be changed so that we don't, as Laura quite rightly says, have people working here and then sending their child benefit to children who've never lived in this country. That's not what, as I said earlier, that's why we need to change the benefit rules, tighten them up, even though I think we should continue to protect the right of Brits to seek work across the European Union. The only other thing I would say to you, Laura, is, look, if you look at the tax system as a whole, we have made, and sort of cost of living as a whole, we have made big efforts to try and make life easier for you and your husband by significantly, as you know, changing the rules about when you start paying income tax. When we came into power, you and your husband would have started paying income tax as soon as you earn $6,400. As of next April, you won't pay any income tax on your first $10,600. That saves both of you over £800 each in lower income tax bills and other things. Council tax has been frozen. Fuel duty, we haven't increased that in the way that was decided upon by the previous government. But I agree with you on the child benefit point. I really do.
Why don't you just not turn up?
Prime Minister's questions?
Yeah.
Well, from time to time, I famously don't, and I suspect I'm not going to. Do you know what? As I said,
Why don't you sit there yawning?
What do you want me to do? Bring a little pillow in?
Yeah, or do
sort
that,
of curl up and
or do that
curl
Peter
up
Kay
and-
trick, which I where you sort of go like that, where you part two fingers and scratch the side of your face, so you make quite clear.
Or maybe some headphones.
That would be a good idea,
headphones.
wouldn't it?
Or catch up on some emails.
Why don't you make
maybe sign some Christmas cards? You're right. The whole vistas of productive activity now open
play
up.
Candy Crush?
Yeah, great Candy Crush. Well, exactly.
Why don't you
Popular
do
on the Conservative
something like
benches.
that? Yeah.
Well, Nick, your suggestions ever are helpful.
What are you going to do in the new
They're
year?
not mischievous in the slightest.
How can we know? Why don't you just pull your eyelid down? Every time he
No,
says something.
of course I will. I'm not going to attend all the time, as I say. And then the more this is basically becoming, in my view, an increasingly sort of tedious exchange of party political. People brandishing their own party credentials, rather than actually what Prime Minister's questions is supposed to be about, which is the opposition scrutinising the coalition government as a whole, and the Prime Minister defending the coalition government as a whole. Then you're right. I think my presence isn't going to be constant.
So we won't see you as much in the new year.
Well, I sort of, I'm not there every time at the moment because as you know,
we've enjoyed.
You've enjoyed the
veritable odyssey,
the odyssey around the country,
shaking hands with each and every voter personally.
Yes, I've only just started.
Couple of emails. Graham in Bushy. Yesterday, the EU removed Hamas from its terror list. Do you agree with that decision? Asks Graham.
I think actually it's not quite like that. It's a very sort of technical, procedural decision. It doesn't change the definition of Hamas. It changes the financial sanctions, or the way in which the financial sanctions were decided on in the EU. If you want, Graham, I can get your details. I was looking at it early this morning.
Okay.
It's a little bit more subtle than that, and I'll get back to him.
Heidi in Kent says, "Are we seeing the true face of UKIP? One of their candidates has been found sending offensive messages about Chinese women, being rude about people in Essex, and horrible terms for homosexuals. Is this their real face?"
Well, apparently, according to, is it Kerry Smith?
Yes,
chap?
this is the...
He was on sedatives, and I don't want Heidi to not take your question seriously, but I thought of all the excuses for this kind of bile and sort of racist, homophobic vitriol, I was on a sedative. I mean, most people on a sedative don't become sort of Alf Garnett on stilts, do they? Most people on sedatives go to sleep, but apparently if you're in UKIP, you go on a sedative, and you just become even more unpleasant. No, Heidi, look, I tell you actually what I think on a serious point. I actually think what we're seeing in UKIP is what I always predicted would happen, is that the more they try and become like a political party, rather than just a sort of movement of angry blokes, and it's almost always angry blokes in suits, just saying they're against everything, and the more they're actually being pressed to say, well, what would you do? And what would you agree on? Of course, the more the problems emerge, because they're not a political party. They're just a bunch of we're against everything. And the moment they actually need to set out what they would do and what they agree on, of course, things start crumbling.
Maybe we should put them on caffeine then. We need to have
yes. I think Red Bull should be prescribed. God, heaven knows if that's what they do on sedatives. What do you imagine what they do if they're on Red Bull?
Imagine that at a Christmas party.
Absolutely.
We have another caller. I think
we do. Nicola in Somerset.
Oh, hello. I want to go back to the subject of school lunches.
Right.
At my daughter's school, the school lunch supplier didn't have the capacity to provide hot lunches for the increased numbers of Key Stage 1 children who are all entitled to free school meals now. So they have they provide a packed lunch. Now, these packed lunches obviously are cold. They're sandwiches, very unhealthy donuts.
Hang on.
And
so this extraordinary healthy school policy,
hang on, don't interrupt Nicola.
Is donuts and a cheese sandwich.
Nicola, don't let him interrupt.
There's a lot of nicks in this conversation.
The sandwiches are either cheese, ham, or tuna. There's no capacity for requests such as no butter or whatever. If you don't particularly like it. There have been occasions when the children had
What's
to
the
have
school
their
called? Can you tell me?
At the end of the lunch period, because the sandwiches turned up frozen. There was another occasion when they turned up in mouldy bread. Most parents I know are now sending in their children with additional food because they're coming home hungry. There's no hot lunches at all for anybody in Key Stage 2, and parents who would have happily carried on paying for the hot lunch, now don't have that option. Also, the children in both Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, who were formerly entitled to a free hot lunch because of their parents' income, and presumably who depended on that hot meal, are now not getting that either.
Nicola, can you tell me the name of your school?
Successful, is it?
Nicola, can you tell me the name of the school?
Well, not on air, no.
Oh, right. So you're
But it's
prepared
not
to tell me all about what's happening in the school, but not. But
It's the supplier's fault, isn't it?
Well, to be honest, I can't. It sounds totally unacceptable, and you are quite right as a mum to be immensely annoyed.
You can address it without knowing the name of the school. I appreciate to follow up, and we will get you that name.
Okay, tell me then, Nicola, the name of the supplier. Do you know the supplier?
I think they're called Edwards and Wood or Ward.
Well, maybe I can get hold of. Maybe you can tell me.
We'll
off
have
air,
one of the
Nicola,
team,
and I will make sure that David Laws and the team in the Department for Education.
This can't be right. Frozen cheese sandwiches and a donut.
Of course, it's not. And Nicola's quite right to ring and be very annoyed about this on the part of. Is it your son or your daughter? Is it the school?
Well, it's my daughter's school. Luckily, she's in year 6, so it doesn't actually apply to her because she prefers the homemade packed lunch anyway. But obviously, all the other children.
And so what you describe it is not actually something that's happened to your daughter, but you know it's happening to the kids at reception in years 1 and 2.
If I was paying for school lunches for my daughter, that's what she would be eating.
And that hasn't changed at all?
Sorry?
And that hasn't changed at all since the beginning of term?
Well, it's been like that, no.
And
obviously, this is the term when children need a hot meal, not...
No, I understand that. I understand that, but I'm just trying to get the facts. If what you say is absolutely right, it hasn't changed at all since the beginning of term, and that they're providing cold, such poor value and poor quality cold meals, that's completely wrong. It's not, of course, what is happening across the vast majority of the rest of the school system. And if I can take the details of the supplier and the individual school, then I will obviously make sure that something's done about it.
OK, stay on the line. One of my team will take it. Last email question. Raquel in Leicestershire asks, Sony have pulled the picture about the North Korean leader. Have they got that right?
No, they've got it wrong. I mean, it's a comedy, for heaven's sake. And I find it's just extraordinary that in a free society we're allowing these online thugs from this police state to intimidate, just people having a bit of fun by at the expense of the North Korean. Now, of course, I
suggest they might bomb the cinemas or the theatres, as they call them in the US.
Look,
it seemed to suggest.
Well, President Obama was quite right in saying that we shouldn't allow this appalling police state in North Korea, who've obviously got absolutely no sense of humour either, because this is a comedy film, by the way, about what happens to the North Korean leader, amongst other things. We cannot allow them to sort of basically intimidate cinema chains and stop audiences enjoying what is by the sounds of it, a piece of sort of Christmas comedy film. And I really do think Sony have got quite a heavy responsibility not to... of course they've got a responsibility to make sure that people are kept safe, but there's a big issue of principle at stake here. Is we can't have police states, basically through hacking and online intimidation, stopping free societies like ours have films shown on the cinemas that we want to see.
I won't see you this side of Christmas, but last week, you may recall, Mr. Clegg, you and I had the privilege of visiting the Sheffield Children's Hospital for a special Christmas edition of Call Clegg. It goes out on Christmas Day. I met with Nick Clegg in one of the children's wards, and you were dressed for the occasion. Straight to the questions. It's a Call Clegg. Mr. Clegg, thank you for coming along. As the same we always do, you've no idea what's coming your way.
Happy Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you. And of
for the listeners, can I just note, I am wearing a loud, cheerful Christmas jumper, and you are not.
No, I'm not. But I am dressed as Santa Claus.
So the politicians are getting more into the spirit of things than the journalists.
I'm dressed as Santa Claus, and thank God this is radio.
But you've compounded this. So you yesterday, last week you weren't wearing a Christmas jumper, and now you sent me an unaddressed envelope for the Christmas card.
But I'm about to put that right for you, because we have a special gift for you. Because today, as I'm sure you're aware, is a special day.
I'm not sure if these visual things work very well on radio.
Thank you. We are on camera, as you know. Can you, Rhiannon, could you place it? It's 7 years since you took over as leader of the Liberal Democrat Party today.
Is it that long? It seems like just like yesterday.
It seems like yesterday. As we bring you the cake that I've had specially made, perhaps you could briefly reflect on those 7 years of highs and perhaps the 1 or 2 lows.
There haven't been any lows, have there? There haven't been any lows. There have been no dips. It's been an...
Do you like what's on the cake?
Yeah, for those who can't see it, I suppose you can't see it, it's a cake with me in a yellow onesie.
There we are.
And I'm now going to cut the yellow onesie.
Sorry about this.
No, it's been a great... Can I first, how thoughtful of you and the LBC team. Yeah. And secondly, thank you for reminding me that it's been seven short, blissful...
You haven't got a 7-year age?
Years. No, I haven't. I'm not sure if I can do quite another 7 years, but I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it enormously.
And we celebrate almost privilege. 2 years as well. Do you realise? Yeah. It's fantastic.
I'll bring the cake next time.
All right, we look forward to that. Nick Clegg, thank you. And Merry Christmas to you and your family and all the teams who work with you. Thank you very much indeed. You're listening to LBC. That's Call Clegg. We return, of course, in the new year. Now, though, the latest news on LBC.
The Deputy Prime Minister has told LBC the right decisions were made when the government sold Royal Mail. That's despite a report claiming the taxpayer could have lost out on up to £180 million. Nick Clegg says he supports the decisions made by Business Secretary Vince Cable.
Bit of extra money possibly could have been extracted out of it, but not without risk. And I think it's quite right. And I've defended, Vince Cable